I'm Brandon.
And I'm Brandon.
And welcome back to Apollo City Comics, your unscripted comic book commentary show, which today is going to be a little bit different. We have a very special guest with us. And Brandon, who did you bring onto the show today?
Today we have our very special guest, Sean, our Bay Area local comic book artist. Am I correct?
Hello. Yes. My name's Sean Choate. Some people call me Retractable. That's what you'll find me under on the internet. And I've been living in the Bay Area for about 5 years. I was studying illustration for a while, and now I'm making comics and playing in a couple bands. I grew up in the South and moved out here pretty much after high school and have just kind of been doing the thing. And yeah, the bands are kind of a new thing, but comics are kind of my first love. And I've got a webcomic right now called Contractile, and that's pretty much who I am at this moment in time.
Dude, that's awesome. Where from the South are you?
I'm from like one of the suburbs between Dallas and Fort Worth, Texas. So that's typically the way people would recognize where I'm from, I guess.
Oh, that's cool. You're from I live in El Paso, Texas. That's
for sure.
Cool.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, okay, cool. Nice. Yeah, Texas natives. There you go.
Yeah.
And then you went over there.
Yeah, I'm out here in San Francisco now. Yeah.
See, I've been prying at Brandon to move out here for the past year.
Where are you at, Brandon? Other non-Texas Brandon?
Oh yeah, it's funny that you say that because that's literally our nicknames. It's Bay Area SF Brandon and
for
Texas
sure.
Brandon.
Oh well, yeah.
Yeah.
No, of course.
Yeah, I'm out here basically born and raised in the Bay Area of San Francisco, and pretty much living in the peninsula now. Kind of got shoved out of the city with how expensive it is, but I'm still in the area.
Totally. Yeah, I live in a little tiny broom closet in the Sunset, basically. I share a little tiny broom closet in the Sunset, actually.
Yeah, the true SF experience.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, if you want to live in San Francisco proper and make art, that's pretty much what you got to do.
Pretty much, yeah.
You guys wonder why I haven't, drifted out of here yet.
Oh, don't worry. The city will grow on you eventually.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's get into it then. So, first thing, again, thank you, Sean, for being here today with us.
Of course. Thank you.
Of course. And let's get into it. What is it that you love about comics?
Well, I feel like, I guess one thing about me is like I'm undiagnosed dyslexic, and that's something I didn't really know until like later in high school. But I just have always read comics because of the flow, and I love art. I mean, I've been drawing since I was a child, and just always drawn to like, I guess, illustrations and ink drawings and I guess characters and stuff like that. It's just always sort of been like a good culmination of like all the things I sort of appreciate in like a physical object. Like when I got a comic book when I was a kid, or like, like the Archie comics they used to have in like grocery stores, right?
Oh yeah.
I would get those all the time. And like, that's like, wow, this is like a physical object that contains like all of the things that I kind of like stories, art, like, I don't know.
The full spectrum, Yeah.
Yeah. It captures a lot, within like the limited space of like a book, Mm-hmm. I've always thought that's cool.
That's really awesome that you're able to notice that, like, especially when you're younger, because I feel like the craft of like art and storytelling within comic books are something people don't realize is, not that easy to pull off,
Yeah.
It's kind of like overlooked, right?
It's definitely a combination of a lot of other skills, I guess. Like when I really got into like I went to school for comics specifically because I'm kind of just like obsessed with it, I guess. To a level, or like the process of it, at least, Mm-hmm. I wouldn't call myself like a huge comic buff. Like I don't read a ton of like Marvel and DC comics these days. I did when I was younger. But then I sort of got into like, I guess the zine sort of stuff, mm-hmm. and then went from there into like, I guess like Dark Horse and Image and I guess third party publishers and like finding people at conventions and stuff like that. But I wouldn't say I have a huge breadth of knowledge of like comics lore, like in mainstream comics, But I definitely have a huge appreciation for like the craft of it, where if I pick up one of those books like off of a shelf, I feel like I can still recognize things in it that were like done really well. Like, you know, like there are elements of like cinematography that come into play, and like it's just a combination of a lot of different art forms. I feel like,
Man,
to a sense where when it's done well, you recognize a lot of different things. I don't know.
That's really cool. You know, just hearing your like story so far and looking at your artwork on your Instagram, which we've linked into the bio. You guys got to check that out. You kind of remind me of Paul Pope for some reason. Like you just have this like have this like metal music attitude, like everything about it, like the way your art resonates, and the way you do your line work really, I thought was really interesting, and it kind of reminded me of him right off the bat. And like now that I see you, like, you know, we're talking on camera right now, I'm just like, man, this guy's like a mini Paul Pope. Like, really. Do you have any other influences besides that?
Paul Pope is definitely an influence. I read Battling Boy when I was in like ninth grade or something.
Okay,
I picked that up. I was like, well, this is really crazy. And then like some of my professors like showed me some of his other books later on that are really sick. And I feel like he did, I don't know, there was some other recent thing that he did that I found that was like, I didn't think Paul Pope would do a thing like it, but I don't even remember what it was. But anyway, other influences. I feel like when I was first really getting into like recognizing different art styles, the stuff that I was reading was like East of West, like that Image title. That was like a Nick Dragotta title.
Yeah, Jonathan Hickman
really
stuff.
Cool to me. Yeah, just like sort of the way he put together different colors and justified them in the same like lighting environments and stuff like that. And also like the shape basis of his character designs. And just sort of like the iconic nature of each character. I'm like this, a lot of things are like jumping out at me in a way that I like in that book.
Cool.
Yeah.
And like,
I was gonna say East of West is one of those books that can only be a comic. I couldn't imagine trying to make that into a TV show or a movie. Like it's so out there, and that's what makes it so awesome. There's just so much going on and just so many influences in there,
but there's also so much in it that's like recognizable, that like sort of brings you back to things that your brain is familiar with, you know? I don't know. It's a really cool meld of, I guess that's the word, of the two things. I also around the same time, like Headlopper, Andrew McLean.
Oh, nice.
I
just picked those up.
Was super into Headlopper for a second. Just like the sort of cartoonish nature of the art in the book really like drew me in, I guess, and I'm into the whole Viking thing. And I actually met him at a convention like before. I mean, back when conventions were happening.
Were a thing,
And he was such a nice dude. Like, and he was just there with, I think, his wife or partner. I'm not sure what their status is. I don't know.
Before we get anyone in trouble.
I'm not gonna pretend to know for sure. But they were just so sweet, and like selling like prints from like different splash pages and stuff like that. Like,
isn't that like the best when you go to a convention to meet some like, you know, writer, artist, whoever that really inspires you, and they're just like a really kind person. It's like the greatest feeling in the world.
Yeah.
Part of it is also definitely like catching them at the right moment though.
Oh, too, definitely.
Because,
yeah.
like I've also like done a couple of like little zine fest type things, and there are like parts of the day, like if a bunch of people come up to me and like have weird questions that I'm not prepared for, like something like that, you know, and then like someone else who's like genuinely interested comes up, then I feel like I'm in a weird headspace going into that conversation, I guess. But that's also something you get used to as you do more of those sorts of things. Yeah.
Of course.
I don't know.
Nice.
So now that you've thrown some like a lot of like independent artists for influences and all that, I'm kind of curious to like, when was it you noticed you started getting into comic books? Because you said, you know, Archie stuff, and you like most people, there was the Marvel and DC things, you know, like. Do you recall when was the first time you were like, I'm actually going to a bookstore to pick up books? And what were the books that like really like, you know, stuck with you? Whether they be the big two or even, you know, whatever it may be, you know?
Yeah, so I kind of lucked out when I was young because we had a comic book store not too far away, and we had a couple that were like slightly further away. So like when I was able to drive, like I could go out to like a bigger comic book store that has a better selection. But I think like when I started going, there was a while where I was like going every Wednesday and like picking up something, you know, and like that was probably in like middle school. I would just like, I think that was like, I'm 23 now, so like this was around the time that like Avengers versus X-Men was coming out.
Oh
and,
man,
like,
Okay.
Avengers
cool, yeah.
Arena. I remember picking up Avengers Arena and thinking that series was really cool. I when I was younger, I was into like anything with like young superheroes. You know, like I found like this lot of like Generation X comics on eBay, and got those and like read like I think the first like 14 issues of that series, and that was like probably one of my favorite 90s Marvel
that
comics
was
now.
Rob Liefeld, right?
I think so.
I just watched
but, you know,
I just watched the Image documentary like literally 2 nights ago, and so I think it's all like fresh in my head. But I think that was the book he worked on, right?
If it wasn't, it was someone who was very strongly influenced by it. As many were at the time.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't know. I'm into sort of the theatrics of that sort of thing also. But I don't know. I also have mixed opinions about Liefeld's work. But
I think we all do.
Yeah.
I don't have as strong opinions as some, I guess. I'm like, I'll read some of it and be like, this is fun, you know, this is cool.
Yeah.
Like I mean, he drew some cool things, but I also, you know, I guess like I've seen images from other pages that look like eerily similar to compositions of his pages and stuff like that. So I'm like,
Trust me.
which like. Yeah. The time, the like deadlines he was probably under at that point, I guess, just because like he was like one of the only comic artists that had like a publicist, you know?
Yeah.
So like, it's kind of understandable, but also like, I don't know.
Just like, oh, well, you know, there was some opportunities, let's just say, to be made at that point.
Yeah. Right. Totally.
Well, when did music come into like your life and everything? And what do you play, by the way?
So I guess I started, I mean, my sister took guitar lessons when she was in like 4th or 5th grade, and I'm like 4 years younger than her, and I like wanted to do it too, basically. So I like learned a little bit of guitar when I was like in, I think like 1st grade or something. Just like how to play a G chord and how to play the Smoke on the Water riff. I guess. Like, you know, the very basics, like what you could teach a child that young, basically. And then I didn't play for a while. I just kind of like was like, okay, well, I learned how to play a guitar, I guess, you know, in my child mind. And then years later, I like, also, when I took lessons originally, they had me playing like a little tiny classical guitar, and I didn't think that was very sick, you know? I didn't think that was very cool. So like later on when I was like a little bit bigger, I like started messing around on like starter electric guitar that I had laying around my house, you know?
Nice,
that I had gotten when I wanted to learn guitar, but they were like, you're kind of too small to use this guitar. So I guess I started getting serious about guitar when I like was big enough to play one and not like stretch my arms super far. But I don't know. I played drums in a band in high school called Capital Punishment. And it was just kind of like a garage rock for fun sort of thing with my buddy named Ben Sanders.
Gotta start somewhere, right?
Yeah,
that's how it always is.
And then, like, later in art school, I ended up starting a band with a couple of my pals who we're still playing together. I mean, we're not playing, we can't gig, but, like, you know, we have some songs that we want to record and stuff. And we recorded some stuff pre-pandemic and played some shows back before. And we're, like, a little 3-piece emo-ish, I guess, remedial math rock band. Called that's UMB. And I play guitar in that one, and then I've recently joined another band called Frothing that's like a kind of surfy doomy psych sort of thing, and I'm playing bass in that one.
Oh, nice.
Sounds fun. Nice.
Yeah.
But also
cool.
like I feel like a lot of like my visual sensibilities come from like, I don't know, like heavy metal album covers and like the visuals that I would see on like, you know, like concert merch and stuff like that. Because that's sort of like the sort of things that I was drawn to at the most formative parts of my life, I guess.
Yeah.
There's other people that have like gotten started like that. Like if you know Greg Capullo, the artist for he got famous for drawing Spawn and a 5-year run on Batman.
Gotcha.
And I'm not even joking. He started out basically as like the cover artist for Korn CDs and like covers.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So,
okay, no, I know exactly.
Yeah, it's
cool.
like
really
Follow
cool.
the Leader and stuff like that. He did all the cover.
Yeah, he
artwork
drew
for
all
that.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sick. Yeah. No, that's great, man. Yeah.
a lot of
Those
punk.
album covers are cool.
Yeah, a lot of punk and heavy metal definitely is like goes back and forth with comic book covers. I don't know how that happened, but it just does.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is like you mentioned Spawn. Like 90s comics were very much like rock and roll, like
Yeah,
heavy
exactly.
metal sort of like vibe. So I feel like, and also just like metal has always sort of like, I don't know, I imagine a lot of like metal album covers as like Renaissance paintings, but like I guess like really terrifying Renaissance paintings.
Yeah,
Not
basically.
necessarily terrifying, but like menacing, I guess.
If it wasn't that, it was like something fantasy related, you know, like
Yeah.
there's a lot of bands out there that really love their stories about like orcs and wizards and elves and
Yeah.
stuff, you know?
Totally,
Yeah,
totally.
like every
Yeah.
Blind Guardian cover.
Yeah,
ever.
literally every Blind Guardian cover looks like it could be a comic book cover.
Yeah, no, I definitely went through the folk metal stage.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Listening to some really heavy sea shanties, you know.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
dude. Yeah.
Some fun stuff.
So, would you say that your taste in music or your influence from music or music in general, has that influenced your process when it comes to drawing or vice versa? You know what I mean? Like, is it one of those things like you draw something and it kind of inspires you to write a certain song to coincide with it? Or hell, do you even have like a playlist you listen to when you're drawing kind of thing, you know?
I think, if anything, maybe the other way around. Like, I think visuals... I think I'm inspired visually by music more than I'm inspired musically by visuals.
Okay.
Maybe.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get
I
you,
think
yeah.
that writing music comes from a slightly different place for me, but I'm not really sure exactly where that is at this moment. But I think visual art definitely like something audio will influence it heavily. Like I don't know, I pretty much always either am listening to music when I draw or like watching some movie that I've already seen or something, and I look up at it every now and then just so I'm not staring at whatever digital screen I'm drawing on at this point, because I don't do as much traditional drawing as I did for a long time. Basically, like right towards the end of art school, I pretty much switched to only digital, and I just use Clip Studio and use it as if I was drawing traditionally. So like I'll layer pencils and then like ink over those and then color as if I was coloring in Photoshop. Basically, that's sort of my I guess process, if I was to call it such a thing. I just pretend I'm drawing traditionally in a digital program most of the time. So there's a lot of screen looking, and I have some glasses that I usually wear, but I've stopped wearing them because masks fog up glasses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. It's cool that you keep just like that groove of everything, no matter what, you still have that same sense of like format and style when you're playing into a new medium. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and everyone has their process of how they go about things, right? Like, there's no necessarily right or wrong way to go about being creative in terms of like the sort of environment you set for yourself, whether it be like complete silence or music or a movie playing in the background, you know. And I think that's pretty awesome that, you know, you let the audio or the audible, however you want to label it, kind of influence from there, you know.
Yeah, well, I think also like I definitely when I'm working on like art or when I'm storyboarding or something, like when I'm doing a creative task, so to speak, I definitely make my best decisions when I feel comfortable, you know, at least with comics, because there's a lot of like things that need to be like working in synergy. So like I feel like when I just am in a comfortable state, like I pretty much will just sit at my desk. I have like a pillow behind me. I'm either watching a movie or like blasting some music that I like. Like listening to music while I work definitely also keeps me going at a certain like pace. Like I guess having a rhythm to sort of like, I guess subliminally follow, not necessarily like as an overt thing, but just sort of having it in the background definitely helps me to.
Oh yeah, that's a real
work, at least.
That's a real thing actually. I remember doing some research on like how music can like basically influence people to work on their like work ethic, and basically the simplest way to look at it is like if you're listening to like fast-paced music, your brain kind of catches up with that and kind of coincides with that tempo, and then you know if your brain's working that fast, your body's going to be reacting that same way, and it's a really good way of putting you in the zone to kind of like be on your toes kind of thing, or you know be whatever zone it may be when you're being creative.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. No, I pretty much listen to music when I'm doing anything, especially things that I kind of don't want to do.
Oh, yeah.
If I like kind of don't want to do something, then I'll like spend a fair amount of time picking the music to do that, to listen to while I do that thing, you know?
Yeah, that's me at work every day, dude. It's just working from home. Yeah, that's just the like. Yeah. What are some of the things you do listen to? If you want to name some artist or band and everything.
Yeah, honestly, recently I've been getting into the Fall of Troy. I kind of like missed them originally. Like I listened to bands similar to them for a little while and like totally brushed over their stuff. But they put out a pretty cool album this year where they like re-recorded a bunch of stuff they wrote like when they were like under a different name before they were the Fall of Troy, the Fallout Boy.
Yeah,
wow.
Total different genre, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. Okay, someone played Fallout Boy in my work the other day, so it's like in there now, you know. But their new album is it has some really cool stuff on it, and also like going back and finding those super old tracks and like listening to them after having listened to the newer recordings of them is pretty interesting to hear like the difference.
That's super cool. I gotta check that out. I grew up on them, so that's them and like Protest the Hero. Was my high school music. Yeah, that's super cool that you're getting into them. Their bassists are badass, dude. So,
yeah. No, I was watching a video of them playing, I think like Sledgehammer or whatever it is, and there was a part where the lead guitarist, I forget his name.
Thomas.
Thomas Eric. He was playing like he wasn't even using his pick hand for like a whole section, and he was like playing this riff with like power chords sliding and also like hammer-on thing higher on the neck. It's like
just making it look like so easy,
ridiculous. Yeah, for sure. But also like I think some of the music that I was listening to the most when I was sort of finding my artistic style was definitely like I guess like post-metal and like kind of sludge type music, like Baroness, Mastodon, the Sword.
Oh, there you go. I was waiting for Mastodon.
Yeah, Mastodon, love Mastodon.
The Sword, so badass.
I think Once More Round the Sun, I found that album.
Oh man, I haven't heard that name in a while.
That led me to like all kinds of other stuff in that world, you know, like that sort of opened a lot of doors for me.
Yes.
Heavy music wise. But I was really into like that sort of sludgy world for a long, and I still am like, I listen to this band Thou very frequently. They just made like a collaboration album with Emma Ruth Rundle, who's like a goth singer-songwriter, sort of shoegazy project. She's really cool. But they made an album together, and that was like a sludge band with like black metal vocals, and it's like a pretty perfect fusion of their two sounds. It's like goth rock, but also like super sludgy and with like a lot of scream sections also. So like, I don't know.
I've got to check that out.
Oh yeah, we should totally make like a small recommendations list to include.
Give us like you guys some recs.
Give us some like 3 or 5 bands. We'll throw them in there. You know. And we'll check them out too.
I mean, I also like I run a radio show these days as of like 35 weeks ago or something.
Oh,
it's been a
cool.
while now. I started like in the summer, I guess, during the earlier part of quarantine, because radio is an essential business. But I'm at a community radio station called KXSF, who I should definitely shout out. They're sick. It's like nonprofit, just community radio run by volunteers. So like I've been volunteering there for
nice.
however many months.
wow.
And I have a show every Friday where I play like pretty much all new-ish heavy music that's come out within the last like couple years.
Oh, cool.
You should definitely give us
goal, at least.
should give us a link. We'll put it in there as well. We'll
Totally,
put a whole paragraph.
totally.
Get it all in there.
Of course.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Whatever.
And then before we go on, I'm just curious now. What movies do you put on in the background for this creative process? I'm curious.
There was a while. Okay, so this October, I watched Evil Dead 2 at least 12 times.
Hey, there it is.
While I was working.
Yeah.
I really like sequels of classic horror, sci-fi, or like those sorts of outlandish films from like, I guess older. Like Terminator 2 is my favorite movie of all time, I think.
Yes. Sorry, I love that movie so much.
It's funny how much Brandon has talked about that movie.
Yeah,
it's my favorite movie.
I bring that movie up so often because I always talk about how it's like a perfect film, practically. Like,
me too. It is. It's basically the perfect film.
Phenomenal. It really is. Like everything about it is just so good.
I also watch a lot of Nick Cage movies. Like, I'm
there you
definitely a shameless Nick Cage fan. I'm really into his work. He goes further than most actors are willing to.
Hey man, he's got some hits, all right.
Yeah. No, he definitely
we
has
watched
some
Ghost Rider and then Mandy, and that was a good transition.
Mandy is a fantastic movie.
Yes,
That's like when I saw that, I was like, I didn't know there were movies that were like this metal. It's like,
dude,
they just have like crazy unreadable logos pop up at certain points in the movie. I'm like, I didn't know you could do that. Like, I didn't know they let people just do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of like restrictions people think are on film. You could do a lot of stuff with film in terms of like the way you show a movie or whatever, or it being experimental kind of thing. It's just like it doesn't sell, so people always go for like this traditional route of movie making.
Yeah.
Well, then he also did The Color of Light. Was it it's the H.P. Lovecraft one.
Something. Oh, Color Out of Space. Yeah, that
Color Out of
was Nick
Space.
Cage.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that one was really good too. I any scene where Nicolas Cage kind of like goes unhinged a little bit, I'm like there for.
Yeah, I know, right? Give the man an Oscar.
Yeah. One of these days, man. One of these days. I need to see The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. That apparently is out, but there isn't like a movie theater that's showing it anywhere.
It's like an indie film,
I don't really
right?
want to go to a movie theater either. Yeah, but apparently it was in theaters. I don't know how to watch it.
Well,
like it said it came out like March 19th, and I was like, I've been trolling the internet trying to find where I can watch it, but it's nowhere.
Well,
I don't even know if it exists.
If we know streaming services, it'll end up there eventually, hopefully. You know,
give it 2 months. Yeah,
give it a couple months.
It'll be right there.
Yeah. I'm just impatient. I need it, you know.
I'm really liking your recommendations right now. This is great.
Thank you.
It's funny because I kind of do the same thing when it comes to, because Brandon and I are both people that are trying to become comic book writers. And
excellent.
Yeah, it's a hard business.
It's a noble cause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's funny because we both work with having music playing in the background or a movie, and it's like really cool to me that there's other people that obviously do it, but I love this like huge range of like film and music that you have no idea what people could be watching or listening to, and it's just so great to hear because maybe one day I'll put Evil Dead 2 on while I'm writing something.
I think you should.
I know, right?
It's worth your time.
It's got one of the best lines ever. Got in my hand. It got bad.
Yeah. But, pretty much.
So, we've gone into like your process of like making a comic kind of, and then, what you kind of do to get you in the mood for it and all that in terms of like whether you play music and everything. When it comes to like really cracking down and like say you're going to create a comic book, like a full-on zine or whatever it may be, do you find yourself how is it when you're cooperating with someone? Do you find yourself that it is a very drastic difference in the process, or do you take control, if you don't mind me asking that, in sense of like, we're going to do this, guys, or whoever you're working with? Do you kind of go, okay, tell me what you want and I'm going to see if I could draw it, or whatever it may be? You know, like, what's your collaborative process like?
I definitely try to be open to either approach of like allowing the other person to sort of dominate the project or me dominating the project. You know, like when I go into working with somebody else, like whoever has the clearest vision of what the thing should be, I think, you know, deserves to sort of have that level of a say, because, you know, if I can recognize that I'm working with somebody else and they know exactly what they need to do, like if I'm working with a writer, sometimes I'll work with a writer and we'll sort of talk out a story or like just bounce ideas back and forth until we come up with something that we think is interesting enough to work on, maybe. But like, you know, maybe someone will come to me with an idea fully laid out and I'm like, okay, I would be down to draw this thing that you've fully actualized, you know? Because like when a script is fully done, or like the ideal script to me.
There it is. There it is.
Which, like, whatever. When the ideal script to me, there will be like no question as to what's going on or like what people are going to be expressing in the moments that I need to show in the illustrations, you know. And that's if I'm just working solely in the role of an illustrator, you know, and keeping my hands off of the writing process. But I like it when I work with a writer and they want my input on, you know, the story and character moments and things like that. Or like if you say in a script, like, feel free to, this is up to your interpretation or something like that in reference to like a specific interaction. That's cool too. I try to just be open-minded when I work with other people, because like, as soon as you allow things to become personal, that's when issues arise when you're working with other people. I try to keep collaboration as impersonal as possible while still allowing my personality to be an element in the process, you know?
Yeah,
that's an interesting observation for sure. Definitely. I really know what you mean by that. That's really cool. Yeah. Especially now in your career, you've noticed that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's also just kind of nice to hear, because like when I go on like Reddit, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go find an artist, you know, because I'm one of those people that's like, I just do scripts. Like, I'll draw.
Yeah, for sure.
I went to college to get like a minor in comic books, and they made me draw. And that's like the most I've done in my career. Like, like I'm bare minimum getting a couple expressions across the page. And like when you go,
well, if you needed to, you could like storyboard out a little quick something.
Yeah, I know how to do that in thumbnails.
You've got
and all
some
that.
Fundamentals. I think that's good for a comic writer to have a little bit of fundamentals.
Yeah, I've always I always do this to Brandon, because it makes me sound like such a expert when I feel like I'm not. I'm like, you know, I went to college for this. I think I know what I'm talking about, guys. Like, but yeah, no, like
I try not to pull that card too often myself. Having gone to comic book college.
It's one of those things that not many people say, so you kind of want to be like, it does exist, you know?
Yeah, it exists, but it's like, even jokingly, to use it as a level of like superiority, in sort of a ludicrous sense, you know. It's like,
I never
such a petty thing to have over someone.
I never try to make it like seem that way. I just say it more as a joke, and I just
I know.
No, it's a good card to pull when you're at parties and whatnot, when you hear everything else, you know, doctors, lawyers, you know.
I'm trying to show love to the comic book program. I'm trying to show love to the comic book program at State, because, you know, they're still growing and, you know,
represent.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's a great program. It's a legitimate minor. But anyways, I was saying, like, when you meet artists, like, say through Reddit, again, because a lot of stuff is done over the internet, you get a lot of artists that are like, I'm this pay rate, I only do this, I'm not going to do these kind of projects, and nothing against them. They're allowed to do what they want in terms of, like, what work they want to take on. But it's really hard when you get someone who's like, I only do, like, fantasy, or I only do like down to earth stuff, and I'm not going to be open to anything else. And it's just like, when you meet an artist like you, for instance, who's like, you know what, let's see what we could do. Let's open up the air and just, you know, go back and forth. And I think that's a really respectable thing, because as the artist, you are doing a lot more heavy lifting, and that's something that, you know, is often overlooked. You know, the main thing on comic books, at least traditional comics, if we're talking whether it be independent or superhero genre stuff, the writer is always listed first. And, you know, don't get me wrong, everybody's important in a book. The inker, the colorist, you know what I mean? Like the person who does words and all that, like, or word bubbles. Right. They're all important.
The people who write the essays in the back of the trades. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, exactly. Yeah,
it's all important, and it all gets overlooked. And I think for you being an artist, for someone who's doing most of, if not like 60% of the work, let's be honest here. You know, you're drawing everything.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest time commitment typically. Involved.
Definitely. Yeah. You know, without that, it's not a comic book. You know, it's something totally different. You know,
it's
a different medium at that point.
Medium relies on.
But what's the beauty with comics is that you could do something as simple as like stick figures, and it would still be a comic. You know, but you know, it all works together. And I think being an artist who's open to, you know, like, hey, what do you want me to do? Or, hey, are you open to this? You know, I think that's really awesome, because when you have a team that works well together and meshes together perfectly, if not perfectly, at least enough to get along and make a book, the story comes out so much better. If there's some sort of friction there or any sort of tension, your book isn't going to come out well. You know, there's because you put a lot of energy. The energy you put into it is the energy you're going to get.
I think part of the reason that I try to be really conscious of that concept, I guess, is probably because of bands, honestly. Because like you watch any rock documentary, and it's it's the never-ending story. You know, it happens to every band ever. You know, so like any type of creative collaboration can sort of in some way equate to, you know, bands, I guess, because it's like you're working together trying to create one thing that incorporates elements of multiple different people. You know, so there's a lot of lore surrounding the friction between, I guess, creative partners already out there, you know, to sort of try your best to learn from before it happens to you.
Before you fall before you fall victim to the same trend or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Not allowing history to repeat itself.
Yeah, I know, right? But sometimes it happens though, right? Like
sure.
I think that's also part of the process. You know, do you know who Rick Remender is?
Yeah.
I got
I've read a couple of books he's been on.
Yeah, I got to meet him, and he one of the biggest I guess you could say pointers he gave me, or one of the best advice he gave me, was that, you know, not everything is going to work out perfectly. And that, you know, and I've said this before because it's a nice reminder for people like who are trying to get into the field like us, you know, like it's good to hear that sometimes the first book you make isn't going to be a hit, or you're going to work with people that are going to bail on you, or you're going to get people that may not deliver on what they promised, whatever it may be, but eventually it'll work itself out if you just stick to it.
Yeah, and also like some pairings of people just aren't like naturally compatible.
Oh yeah, totally.
Exactly.
And it's hard to force that sort of thing. Like if you just don't have chemistry with another creative, like you can't force yourself to have chemistry with them. You can force yourself to be agreeable with them and try to still make something, but it's not going to have the same level of sort of like, I guess, synergy, to recycle a word.
And it shows in the work, you know, the final product. You can kind of feel how some things just feel off, you know, with the text or with the art, how things just don't line up right sometimes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's not as smooth as like a coming together of elements.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then so you said you're into zines, correct?
Yeah.
Have you done any sort of like zine fest or any sort of, you know, whatever it may be, just something in that field? Because to me, at least from what I've heard, like zines are a little different than like comic conventions, for instance. Have you ever gotten a chance to be in any of those?
Yeah. I've been in a couple of zine conventions. I think, well, the first thing that I sold art at, I guess, my chair's really squeaky, but that doesn't matter.
We all have that with chairs.
Cool. Okay. So the first thing that I like sold art at was like an apartment art / like house show thing that like had a couple of people play music and like a couple different vendors. And then like the next week I had got a spot at Mission Art and Comics Expo, which I think only happened like one or two times, because I was there at the first one. There might have been a second one.
The comic book shop, right?
Pre-COVID. No, that's Mission Comics Experience.
No. Oh, okay. I'm mixing up shops. Sorry. Mission Comics and Art.
This is Mission Art and Comics Expo was like a zine festival.
I did hear about that one.
Some people I kind of knew put up, or I like was in a class with a girl who like at the time was close to one of the people on the board of it, so like I found out about it through her, and got a table there and sold the few zines that I had, you know, and like just a couple of like little prints and things. And then I also did San Francisco Zine Fest, which is the one that's in that little like tiny convention center type building in Golden Gate Park.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. You might have met my professor, maybe.
That one was cool. It's possible. Yeah. I've been there a couple of years as like just a spectator also. I've only sold stuff there 1 year.
Yeah. My professor that taught my graphic memoir class, they were super adamant about like, you know, checking out Zine Fest, and they had a whole bunch of like zines that they made and published books, and always at the conventions and always like there supporting local artists. So there's a good chance that you might have crossed paths with some like a few people from my classes.
There was a couple of years where I was like going to whatever ones I found out about, you know, and just checking it out. Because honestly, like the cool thing about a Zine Fest, with the comic convention, you kind of like, for me at least, like I know what I'm in for when I go to like a comic convention, you know. I've been going to comic conventions for like a long time. They have comic conventions in Dallas, Texas that I used to go to when I was a youngster. And I've been to San Diego a couple of times, and I've been to San Francisco Comic-Con back when that was a thing in like Ape Expo.
I went to that one too.
Yeah.
The one in Oakland?
I don't know if Ape was in Oakland, right? Or no, it was in like
There was the last San Francisco Comic-Con was the San Francisco Comic-Con at the Oakland Coliseum or something like that, or Oakland Convention Center.
I think I was at the one before that. At like a hotel downtown or something like that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I was just and
that was cool. But like when I go to those things, I'm like kind of like know what I'm in for in terms of like the artists who are going to be there. It's like they're probably listed on the website for the thing. With Zine Fest, it's like they're all pretty much like, it's not like there are big zine companies. Like,
no, it's all independent artists.
It's all like local. So it's like you really get to see who is actually connected to your specific area. Like I found this zine. Maybe I have it next to me. I'm not gonna waste my time looking for it though. I found this zine from like an artist who I found when I was like getting into like lowbrow illustrators on like through social media, when there were first like 1 million illustrators on Instagram posting stuff all the time. Not first, but like there was a period of time where that was like booming, I guess, like lowbrow illustration on Instagram specifically. But there was this dude named Matt Scadam who went by Draculaser, and I found one of his zines, and I was like, I feel like this guy's like not that like big or anything, but he had a zine at the Floss Editions I guess table, and Floss Editions puts out a lot of like lowbrow-ish mostly risograph, I believe, zines. And also with Zine Fest, you'll find a lot of like, I don't know, the things that you'll find are sort of more like created like a piece of like print art more so than like a comic book, which is like a magazine, you know. It's like sort of like just the brass tacks, this is the book. With zines, there's like, you know, it's like there's something to like what type of paper they used or like what sort of printing methods they used to put it together. Like I've got a couple of like risograph zines that are like, you know, it's like a fold up that goes out into like a big poster or something like that. You know, you find more sort of like, I guess, individual pieces. Like, I don't know, I think of those things as like artifacts, you know. It's like a very specific object, you know. I think that's cool. I like that element of like the print media.
Yeah, I saw a zine one time that was like it was shaped like a butterfly, and there was holes burnt into it that like altered
cool.
the color of like the text and everything. So I definitely know what you're talking about, where like it's that beauty of comics where it's more than just like this paper with image and words. It's the way you interact with it, because you could do that with the material and the medium itself.
Right. Yeah, I took like a zine class at my college, and we had a risograph. It was like a somewhat primitive risograph. It was the type. It wasn't like a digital one. They have some where you can like load files and just sort of do it really easily like that. But ours was more like a Xerox. It's like sort of the halfway point between a Xerox machine and like screen printing.
Oh, nice. That's too cool.
So like it's got like the scanner bed on top. So you like put a black and white image onto it, and you put in a big drum of risograph ink and like stacks of paper, and it just sort of like feeds them through and like screen prints an image onto the paper like with this risograph ink. And then you have to let it dry, and risograph ink never fully dries actually.
Oh wow, I didn't know that actually.
Yeah, so like a lot of times if you get a risograph book, like
it'll smudge.
If it's someone who like does a lot of them, yes, but also like sometimes you'll get it in like a little sleeve, like a plastic sleeve, like like if you get an old like back issue or something, it's like to protect the ink, because it'll like smudge basically forever. It's never going to be fully dry.
That's pretty crazy.
So those are kind of more delicate,
cool.
but it's really cool. Like it's like you can get really cool effects from the way the colors interact with that kind of printing. I don't know. Anyone who hears this and doesn't know about risograph printing, I recommend checking some stuff out. Just because it's a neat printing method that you don't see a lot.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I never knew anything about that.
Yeah, neither did I.
Yeah.
It's actually like it was made for some. I learned this in zine class. It was made for like schools, like public schools, because they would have to print flyers. So they made these like these weird Xerox machines. I think it was in like the 80s or like early 90s or something. I feel like it would have been easier to just like add some innovation to like the regular Xerox, but here we are.
It's still a thing. It's still going.
It's still a thing, and people are using it, so why not?
Exactly. Yeah. Led us to where we are today.
You got any?
With some of your
I was gonna say, go ahead, Brandon, because I got like a few more.
So with like some of your comics, your web series that you have out on Instagram right now, very musically based.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're drawn to? Is that like where you really pull your inspiration? You combine music and your storytelling at the same time. Where did that whole idea kind of come from?
Well, people tell you to write what you know, right? So pretty much all I really know about aside from drawing is like playing music. That's like the other thing I spend my time thinking about.
Yeah.
I basically spend almost every waking moment thinking about one of two things.
Definitely. Yeah. I know how that
to
is.
some level at least, So yeah, I mean, the comic that I was doing before Contractile, I did a couple of little pieces between them, but I was doing a comic that I still kind of, like before the pandemic, I was like thinking about retooling it into like a pitch and maybe pitching it around. But it was like a fantasy comic about like a human who's like the only human in this like strange, I guess, fantasy world, and he's like a guitar player, and there are like enchanted guitar picks that
Nice.
sort of give different flavors to what you can achieve with a guitar, I guess. So like, yeah, it was called Chet the Brutal and the Six Picks of the River Styx. And awesome. I made like 2 chapters of it when I was kind of like not as good at drawing. I mean, I was like learning a lot about making comics at that point. That was like when I was sort of in the middle of like the comics classes I was taking in my degree, I guess. So I was like, it was pretty much just a learning process. I was like, I just want to make something, to be making something, to not be making something, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's sort of how that one stemmed. But I mean, I like the character designs. I like a lot of aspects of it. I think that it would be cooler if I built onto the world and made it into more of a thing than it is. So that might happen someday. But that me bringing that up is sort of just to, I guess, enhance the point that I pretty much only like really write about, I guess, music related things. Not necessarily only, but like I guess I've been writing some fiction that's like not about that necessarily, but that's, I don't even know if that's something I want to eventually put out or like put into the world. It's just kind of something for myself. I just like writing also, and sort of forgot about that side of things for a long time. And like writing more comics has sort of got me more interested in just like writing in general,
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's a good use of time. It's a good use of brain.
Yeah. That's cool.
So-
That's super cool. I have the same mindset. I was a musician my entire life, and then I kind of switched to writing a few years ago, and that kind of became my thing. But that's when you say everything. That's what I was so gravitated towards your series, because literally the majority of the stuff I write is musician based. It's about bands and it's about stuff, and I have every type of punk rock, metal type of thing in my head all the time for that. And it's really cool hearing your side of that, because it's like, oh, okay, cool. I'm not the only one that's like obsessed with these two aspects and that type of storytelling. Yeah.
That's good. Well, like we got things like Metalocalypse and things like that in this day and age. Like they're definitely, there are examples of like heavy subjects, heavy themes pervading into things that succeed to some metric in the creative industry, It's like there's hope for folks like us these days,
Yes.
We live in a good time in history to be like this.
That's so funny. Me and my girlfriend just finished watching all of Metalocalypse. I had to show her that show.
Really?
Nice. Yeah,
Nice.
so we just finished it, just revisited that too.
Such an underrated show.
I got to go back through it. It's been a long time for me.
And like, does no one realize how ridiculous of a guitarist Brendan Smalls is?
Oh yeah,
no, he's insane. Have you heard his?
And he does
He's
Nathan
got other
Explosion's
albums
voice.
too. Like,
well,
he does. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
Okay,
and
And he plays bass. He does all the bass and guitar stuff.
Well, he made some solo albums that are like. Did you guys see this? Brendan Smalls Galactica.
Yes, they made a copy out of it too.
I was pretty into the first one. I didn't like. That's right. I didn't listen to the second one a lot, but I got a fair amount of time out of the first one. That was a solid record.
I also know Deathclock toured with Mastodon and Megadeth, I want to say.
I saw that tour. I was gonna say
maybe like
I wanted to go to that.
I saw that.
Would it have maybe been Meshuggah potentially or something?
Maybe
like that?
it was a while ago.
I saw them with Converge, and then it was Mastodon, and then Metalocalypse right after it.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, yeah. I remember that. It was. I remember wanting to go so badly, but it was only like a handful of shows, and it was like really hard to get to because everybody was trying to go.
It was
of course.
Fucking awesome, dude. Fucking Mastodon and Metalocalypse. You can't go.
Oh, man. I've never seen Deathclock, the live experience, but I did go to a show at the Regency downtown in SF that was put on by Adult Swim, and it was like to promote the show Mr. Pickles.
Oh, I heard.
Oh, wow. I remember. Yeah.
And it
I feel
was
like no one talked about that.
Exodus and Municipal Waste, and like I forget the third band, but it was Exodus and Municipal Waste, so it's like some legit thrash metal bands. And there was like a huge wall of death, and like one of my friends who I used to go to concerts with a fair amount, who like goes way harder than me. Like I lost them in the pit for like the whole night.
Dude, once they get in
sort
there,
of like a stay near the edge of the pit and like push people back in and headbang type of guy myself,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Sometimes I'll enter the chaos, but I like to watch the band play too,
Yeah, I'm more of an
I get
observer,
that.
unless I really something really like I saw Dylan Dirk Escape Plan on their final tour, and I had just gotten a tattoo right before that show started. Like I went from the tattoo shop
during that show.
Yes, and then I was like, I'm going, and then you just can't help it, like
I'm one of those people that I love going to metal shows, but I can't do pits. I gotta just sit on the side, and that's just me personally. I don't like getting hit by accident. I'm gonna be honest. You know,
I don't think
that part's not fun.
Yeah, it all happens too.
I don't know. There was one. I played this. Okay, one of my bands played a show right before the last night that the Honey Hive in SF was open. Before everything shut down. So like I guess the final night of shows they had there, they like canceled the show that was the next day basically. I like during one of the opening bands we played with Goof actually, Ahmed's band, and also like another couple of bands that we like sort of knew, like this band called Lizard Music, who I hope is still playing or doing something, you know. I hope they're doing all right as a band. But like during their set, I totally took like a buzz-cutted head to the face and like may or may not have broken my nose, you know. And like I just sort of like turned around and like looked at my drummer, and she was like looked like something horrible had happened to me basically. So I just like went and cleaned myself off. But honestly, like it wasn't a bad experience for me, you know. It definitely hurt, but it wasn't a bad experience.
I've had that happen on stage. I had my guitarist. I turned around and the head of his guitar hit me right in the nose, and I didn't know it.
Yeah.
I just remember looking down and like seeing my sweat fall, and then I was like, "Why is it
Because the
turning
adrenaline,
red?"
you're like,
yeah, you don't really realize it, and then you realize you're just gushing blood for a bit, and you're like, "Well, I got to finish this set."
I was just like, "Oh, I got hit by something."
Yeah.
Whatever. Like, you know?
It's happened before. Yeah.
It's like I still had to play a set later that night, you know. It was like before we even started, so I like
The
had to
show
hype
must
myself
go
back
on.
up. Yeah. It still happened. I didn't like.
Yeah, it's part of the business, I guess. People eventually get hurt by accident.
Yeah, and like I don't know, when I go to shows, I'm like expect that I might maybe get hurt by something, you know. It's like I don't know.
Yeah.
You go.
I went to like a Deaf Heaven show. I'm a big Deaf Heaven fan.
Oh, nice.
They're a pretty cool shoegaze black metal combo band, if anyone doesn't know. But I went to one of their shows, and like I got pulled into the pit by some guy that I didn't know, like right before their set started. He was like, "Hey, like, are you moshing with me tonight?" And I was like, I don't know, maybe. Like,
I guess so.
I don't know, you dude,
find a
but
buddy.
like, maybe, yeah. And he was like, "Well, you're dressed like you're moshing with me tonight," and he just like grabs me and pulls me into the pit.
Some people live for that stuff, man.
Yeah, hell yeah.
No, it was cool. It was a great experience. I wouldn't trade it for standing still and watching the show, you know.
Yeah, when it comes to like metal and punk shows, as long as like no one's trying to be like rude,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
people are really chill. They'll be really, you know, a lot of I've been to shows where people are totally like rude and like just terrible at times in the crowd.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of the time, more than that, people are pretty nice and like, you know, we're all here trying to have a good time and just trying to hang out. You know, let's just have some fun. So it's always nice when that happens.
Right. No, totally. When it's that kind of energy, that's the ideal scenario. It's very easy to pick out the people who are going to cause issues in the pit, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know,
We've had our fair share of experiences of hardcore kids getting too hardcore.
I've been to a lot of shows, but the band I was in when I was younger, we sucked. We barely got past like 3 songs, so we never played.
Yeah.
But I definitely got the experience going to shows.
Yeah, for sure. No, definitely. It's like, well, I have more experience of that going to shows than playing. Honestly, like a lot of the shows that I played were like either mostly friends of bands and like people who knew people who were associated with the show. It's like we did a couple of shows that were also art shows, so like the friends of the artists.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
People who knew about those people. You know?
You might have like met some people I know that are in bands as well.
It's possible.
SF is a small city.
Yeah. Dude,
SF is a very small city.
For sure. No, definitely. I mean, I know, and also like working with the radio, like I've met a ton of bands just around SF, because like we were doing like weekly sessions where we would have a band come in all wearing masks and like record them in our like the station room building thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so like the station rents a space out of Light Rail studios over like near Potrero. So we would have like bands come in and like record them with like little mixers.
Oh, nice. That's
so
awesome.
like it was a cool way to, you know, still experience some live music when it's not like happening in any official or sanctioned way, or legal way, I guess.
Yeah, we gotta support local bands.
Totally, yeah. There's not a ton you can do to support local bands unless they like have merch out. I guess Bandcamp Fridays help, but I don't know how many people actually buy
Like
music
some
on Bandcamp.
Yeah.
Some sort of Patreon thing or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I don't know, man.
the hardest question of the night I've been waiting to ask, and I'm just gonna ask it. What is it you hate about comics? And that could be anywhere from the process of creating them, reading them, the industry, whatever it may be. You know, everybody, you know, it's not a perfect industry, of course, big or small. But, you know, we all have our things that, you know, piss us off a little. And I like to ask that question because it's a way for us to look at it and go, okay, how can we influence the industry to be better, to avoid these problems? You know?
Yeah. Okay. I think for me, right, I'm going to call it the rule of two, and it applies to every area of entertainment, right? Okay. So basically, there can only be two big names that occupy any space in entertainment. We've got Warner Brothers and Sony. We've got Marvel and DC, you know, like guitar manufacturers. We've got Gibson and Fender. And then there's like all the other guys, you know, but there's always the two. I think that's the thing that bothers me the most, is the sort of built-in hierarchy that exists in all areas of entertainment. But like in comics, it's like, you know, the thing that bothers me about the rule of two in comics specifically is that the big two in comics only put out a certain type of work for the most part, at least these days. So it's like there's more crossover as time goes on. Every now and then we get some crossover, like DC has Vertigo sometimes, and like they're like the imprints and stuff like that. But you have to be kind of someone who is familiar with the cycle of comics releases to catch on to those sorts of trends.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you're just, you know, a person who kind of likes comic books, and you go into a store and you look at most of what's on the shelves, it's going to be pretty much like superhero genre or like some form of action, you know? It's like
pretty much.
The things earlier on I said, like, I mentioned, like, when we were talking about my influences, how, like, I guess my influences sort of, like, my sphere of influence grew drastically when I started getting into, like, third-party publishers and, you know, things from sort of the fringe of, I guess, the comics shelves. Just things in other genres like horror, sci-fi, fantasy. You know, it's like you see elements of those things in like the mainstream comics, I guess. But it's sort of overpowered by like a uniform sort of coding to me, you know.
The costume. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The art
Costume
styles that they only allow.
Right. Yeah, that as well, you know. It's like I sort of early on I decided like unless something insane happens and somebody's like, hey, you just do a book for somebody like whatever way you want to, you know, like the what's his name? I'm blanking. Todd.
McFarlane, yeah. Todd McFarlane.
Yeah, Todd McFarlane. Like with the Todd McFarlane Spider-Man run, they were like, Todd, just do whatever you want with it, you know, like that's the only situation where I would feel that I can bring my best self creatively to a Marvel or DC book. I don't think
understandable.
I don't draw that style. That's not the style that I'm interested in creating personally, you know. If I was given an opportunity to do it the way that I feel comfortable working, that I like feel that I can show elements of, you know, my best work in, then it would have to be something real specific that they probably wouldn't give me, you know, unless I do something really crazy outside of that. So
nice. That's cool.
I just don't have any expectation.
No, that makes total sense.
In that realm, I don't expect to have a place there for me, you know.
Definitely. I know what you mean there.
I'm definitely seeking something else, at least at this point.
Okay. I see. Real quick, now that you bring that up, I'm just curious. Do you have a dream job, whether it be independent or at DC or Marvel? Like, if you were given the opportunity to write or draw a major character, what would be like, this is it for me, this is what I've wanted my whole life? Like,
it changes all the time. I think for a while I thought that, you know, a great place for me to go would be like doing like all ages sci-fi graphic novels geared towards like young teenagers or like older kids, you know. Because I feel like there's a lot that you can communicate with science fiction in indirect ways.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's like sort of a method of communication with young people that I feel works better, you know, like indirectly communicating ideas. When you just say something outright, it's like, well, you think you know this thing, or at least for me when I was young, it's like, you think you know this thing, why are you telling me this thing? You assume you know this thing. Yeah. But you know, like,
show me what it is.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like showing, not telling, I guess. I don't know. But I think if I were, you know, to have a run of comics that's like my dream run of comics, it would either be like something super off the deep end, edgy, like DC Black Label, whatever, and just like work with, I don't know, if I could like work with Alan Moore, or like, I don't know, I guess Alan Moore, dude. If I could work with Alan Moore, that'd be really cool. Or like, I guess Marvel. I don't know. Maybe like an X-Men story that's like really cool and unique.
Hell yeah.
I think X-Men was one of my faves for a long time, just because of the wide. It's like anything is a mutant, you know. It's like it doesn't have to make sense. Yeah.
The scope is unlimited.
Definitely allowed themselves to go to some very creative places with X-Men compared to a lot of other superhero stories, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting for a lot of people, like, you know, for a lot of people like who are really into comics, they all want to do their own thing, their own independent thing. But I always find it interesting that you know, because of our nostalgia or whatever it may be, our influences, there's always sometimes like those one or two characters you just really want to crack at, you know, like,
yeah, sure.
Like there's just, everybody wants to do their own Batman run, everybody wants to do their own Spider-Man, you know, everybody's got a certain character they want to do, and you know, it's one of those things.
If I could do like a really cool Thor run, dude, that would be really sick as well.
I mean, dope.
Oh, there it is.
Thor's cool,
he's got the list coming out. He's like, all right, X-Men.
Just kidding. I love superhero comics with a burning passion. I mean, I don't hate superhero comics by any means. I don't hate any kind of comics, you know.
It's just like you get burnt out a little, right?
Yeah.
And you want something different. Yeah, no, I get it. Trust me.
Well, I'm with any type of media, I'm like, I want something strange. I want something that's not like the other things I've seen.
Exactly.
That's what I seek, I guess.
But yeah, and you know, thinking about what it is with the comic book industry, you know, how you're talking about like the big two, how it has to be this like, you know, either action genre or superhero genre. I could totally see how that's like off-putting for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Or even annoying, you know, maybe you want to tell a superhero story, but it doesn't always have to be like fist fighting and like, you know, drop kicks and, you know what I mean? Like you could do other stuff with it.
I think it leads to like a kind of gatekeepy mentality for some people, you know?
Yeah, I can see
like,
that.
for sure. My sound editor, Frank's going to love you, man. He's going to be like, I can't wait to get the text when he edits this. He's going to be like, this guy's fucking awesome.
Yeah, you know what, Frank? Throw in a cheer in there, you know?
Hey,
get like a crowd going.
Sure. I'm down with it. Give me some sound bites.
I totally get it though. It's just like, you know, you look at the shelf and you're just like, Jesus Christ, there always has to be like a superhero book of the same, whatever it may be, whether it be gotta stop the bad guy, which isn't a bad thing either, but I don't, you know, like you're saying, you don't need to make every book like that.
It takes some digging, you know, it takes a lot of, it took me a while to really dig and discover stuff, you know. I think I had a lot of luck because I was really into the movie Heavy Metal from the 80s.
And, for sure.
And that put me on a good path of like finding independent stuff and having that balance out too. Man, that's really cool.
I learned a lot about illustration from Heavy Metal magazines too.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude.
Because there's such a wide variety of stuff in there. It's like that's totally like pushing comics in a ton of weird directions. Yeah, that stuff is so cool.
Quite literally, the format allows for these big bombastic scenes too, because it's like magazine size, right? So
exactly.
It's in your face,
right?
And then you're the one kid who's not just reading superhero magazines. You know all these other ones. You know, like that's it.
This one's called Heavy Metal. Man.
What do you guys? What are you losers reading? Reading some Spider-Man? Well, I'm reading Heavy Metal.
Well,
exactly. You know, that's an element of it for sure.
what?
You got anything else, Brandon? I got like a few more to wrap up, but
I literally just have like one more question to wrap up. So you have your musical journey going on right now, and your artistic comic book journey. How are you looking to balance it out? Like, what do you really like looking to really invest yourself in the long run?
I mean, that's a really good question, because I do, when I think about what I'd like to do with sound, with playing music, is like I'd like to be able to tour and like reach people with things. But also like part of me is almost more invested in like the songwriting and recording process, So like, and comics is a thing that can be done from anywhere on the planet if you have the tools in front of you. And if you're able to accumulate the tools, so is recording music, So I'd like to, I guess, sort of my ideal state is being just sort of like a person who exists in their space and just creates things and sends them off. And like, I don't know. I just like to make things and disown them into the world. And that's sort of the goal.
Nice. Hell yeah. That's the greatest answer I could have asked for. That's hell yeah, dude.
Wow. Thank you.
And basically to, so we don't go all night, because we are all comic book fans. We could talk all night about why we hate DC and Marvel, or why we love DC and Marvel, but to not hold anybody else off any longer, my last set of questions basically are, you got any planned projects? Anything you're willing to share or, talk about, and how you got involved with Ahmed, and, how he helped us connect and everything, and, how you did his comic and all that.
Well, that's two birds with one stone right there.
Boom!
Because
there it is.
one of my planned projects that's coming out, I don't know the date. I don't have a date for it. But it's coming out, I believe, alongside the new Goof music release, which is an album that they're recording at a studio in SF. At least, I think, like a couple weeks ago, I was seeing some like studio shots on their social media or something. So they're like in the process of that, or at some point in that process. I'm stoked for them on that album. It's going to be cool. I've heard some of the songs. But yeah, so the Goof comic, which Ahmed wrote and came to me with, like, I guess a couple months before this summer, basically. It's going to be coming out alongside that. I did all the inks for it and like the storyboarding. I guess pencils and inks. Someone else is handling colors. We got Ahmed's girlfriend Lily, I believe, handling colors. Nice. And yeah, so it's just a little 3-person book about the band Goof. It's gonna be fun, man. Yeah,
nice.
That's too cool.
How'd you guys come across each other?
Well, I actually I found Goof on Instagram because they were playing at a show that was put on by KXSF, I believe, and then I hit them up to play at a show that I was helping some people put on at a space in the Mission called Querius Labs, where we've played 2 shows, and it's sort of like a
nice
DIY space, I guess. Like, I think during the day, a lot of like hackers and computer people go there and work on stuff, and that there's like a couple of people who like, they don't work there, but like they sort of make sure the lights stay on and the door stays open and stuff like that. So it's a really cool space, and they let us play some really wild shows in there. It's just a little tiny like art space. Yeah, so like that, and that was like the the second time we played there was with Goof, but the first time we played there was the first gig that we had, and we just got it through like a friend's band who like we ran into outside of the place where we were practicing. We were practicing in a studio called Music City SF. It's like a plug and play place. They have like drums and amps, and we just like showed up with guitars and jammed there for a while. And their weekday morning rates were like $15 for like 3 hours.
Oh,
so like
hell
you
yeah.
could have like a 3-hour band practice and not have to have any of the gear or anything for like $15, dude. It's like really sick place. I think they're back open now, actually, maybe. But I'm not.
Is this
sure.
place in the Mission?
The Music City is up on Bush Street, so it's like in the Tenderloin Knob Hill area, I guess.
Okay, no, I'm thinking of like a
closer to
recording
Napo.
studio that's in the Mission.
There's a bunch of like
Yeah,
recording studios and studio spaces out like towards the Mission and Soma.
yeah, that's like my neighborhood I grew up in. So I just remember seeing all those different like random record stores and studios just kind of there.
Yeah, I'm new to it all, man. I didn't get many tastes of it before I moved here. I've been to SF before, like in my younger life. I have a lot of family in California. But like, in terms of like spots for like music and stuff like that, and like venues and like spaces, it's like I'm like seeing all these different ones, like they're just discovering them over time. It's like there's quite a lot when you dig around a little bit. And we've got a space now that's like near the radio station. It's like a little tiny room that we share with a bunch of bands, and it's the cheapest arrangement we could find, but it's not ideal. But also upcoming projects outside of Goof Comic, I've got a couple of albums that I'm working on recording. The album is going to be recorded this summer. The Frothing EP thing, we've got like 5.5 songs that we're going to record at our drummer's space. I met him through the radio station running sound. He's like used to run sound at like I think it's called the Cat Club, like in LA. Like one of the guys from the Stray Cats opened it.
Wow,
and like
yeah.
a bunch of old school rockers, I guess, hang out there.
Yeah,
like
I've heard about
in a low key sort of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And he like ran sound there for a while before he moved up to SF, and he's a super cool dude. If you're hearing this, Chris, you're a cool dude. He knows. But he's got a space over like closer to the Mission, I guess, where he has a ton of like recording equipment. So like everything's mic'd up there, and we just kind of like record practices and stuff like that. It's been really cool. And they were in a band before I knew them called Kron, which was like a progressive stonery type band. Which
Never heard of that mixture of genres. I got to check that out.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think Mastodon's almost kind of like progressive stoner metal.
Yeah, it is sludgy, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I could see that. Okay.
I don't know.
Sleep and all that type of stuff.
I guess,
yeah.
Got more progressive as time went on, I guess, with Mastodon. But I've got those that I'm working on. Contractile is coming out. I'm trying to release it on a bi-monthly schedule. The page counts are kind of, fluctuating just because of I don't know.
Hey, that's how it goes sometimes.
Life.
Yeah. That's totally fine. Life happens, and you just gotta, take it one step at a time.
Yeah. There'll come a time where I'll have more time to work on Contractile and all of these projects. There was actually with Contractile, I've got like I think 12 or maybe 14 pages up right now. I don't remember exactly. But once I have like enough together, the plan eventually is to print those in books that are the same dimensions as CD cases and try to sell them not only like online, but like through music stores also. Try to get them on CD shelves.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Nice.
Just because it's, it's a comic about a band making an album, to some level, or like it's a comic about being in a metal band, but it's a sci-fi comic about being in a metal band. And, all the members are like either, there's 2 artificial humans, there's 2 cyborgs, there's the hologram of Kirk Hammett from Metallica, and like, they're just like a band of sci-fi things. And they were basically created by their record label, and they're sort of like they have to live in servitude, but that's sort of not something that metal bands like to do. If you listen to metal a lot,
it's not
that's not what they're about.
There you go.
It's not very metal or punk rock to do
so
that.
You can't create a metal band to be subservient,
That's awesome. I was checking it out today. It's good stuff. Like I can't wait to share it on the page.
Yeah, I can't wait to check it all out. And
I appreciate that greatly, my dudes. That's wonderful.
Yeah, of course. We do this because we want people to experience what everybody's trying to create and what everybody wants to put out there, and
for sure,
gotta make sure to basically share the love.
All about that, dude. Yeah, 100%. That's sick.
But boom, there it is. Rock and roll.
That's all we got, dude. It's been great talking to you guys.
Yeah.
You guys are cool.
Yeah,
thank you.
Where can they
it's
find?
great having you on.
Where can they find you on Instagram, and what are your social media channels?
Yeah, I'm fairly easy to find on the internet if you know where to look. My Instagram is retractable.zone, the retractable zone. My radio show is Retractable Moments on KXSF, and I post about it every week when it happens based on my story. So like, if you follow me, then you'll know when it happens, probably. What else have I got? I've got a Gumroad. I've got a website. My website is just my I guess parts of my legal name. I go by my middle name. I'm one of those guys. I have a secret name. But seanchoate.com, seanchoate.com. It's got a bunch of, I guess, some of my favorite illustrations that I've done on there and some comic pages that I feel like came together well. It's sort of like my online portfolio, so to speak.
Nice, yeah.
Whereas Instagram, I just kind of throw everything I do, art-wise. Like I have sketchbook drawings that I don't post, of course. I feel like every illustrator does.
Yeah.
Or it's good to, at least, just have things that are for yourself or for like exploring a certain idea of how to handle something visually, like I also feel like something that helped me develop my style was like trying to draw my own face from memory, because it's like I don't need reference. I know what I look like. I've looked in a mirror enough times in my life to know pretty much what my face looks like. It's a good way to just develop a style because it's something I mean, I know what my face. I don't know how else to say it.
It's funny you say that because it literally comes back to that class I took. The way we took attendance was you had to draw yourself and put the date on there and turn that little card in, and that's how you got counted for class. And it's kind of funny because like everybody's art style changed, and my professor looked at me. She was like, "You literally look the same every single day." So it is good practice, though, to develop your style. I agree with you. 100%.
I mean, if you go at it with an exploratory mindset, I guess drawing anything can help you develop style. But like, it's easiest with the things that are most familiar.
Yeah.
Nice,
dude. That's so cool.
Yeah. Like I said, boom, there it is. Rock and roll, and how rock and roll brings comic creators together.
yes, absolutely.
I also want to give a quick shout out to Ahmed, Goof the Band, for bringing us together. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been able to connect with you, Sean. So super huge thank you to him, and thank you to you. If it wasn't
for him, I wouldn't have been able to connect to you. So I agree. Shout
out to him, and definitely check out his band stuff and when his comic's out. And thank you for being on the show. We really appreciate it, for taking the time, and I hope you had a fun time. We did. We'll put all the links in the description. And you got anything, Brandon?
Yeah, just check out everything else we do. Backlog Breakout's out right now. We have Sutro Side Watch with Sutro Side Talk, Third Planet of the Black Hole, and Uninformed Movie Reviews, which our sound engineer Frank is a part of. Man, dude, this was such an awesome conversation. Just metal and comic books. I
agree.
Yeah,
I know, right?
It's like
metal
two of my
and
favorite
comics.
things in the world. But
imagine if I went onto a show where like they weren't into heavy music or anything, and I'm just like, it's kind of like this.
Yeah. Mastodon, a lot of wiggly guitars and a lot of.
I don't know how you guys listen to all that metal. It's so
kind of
loud
stoner, but it's kind of progressive.
Stoner just like isn't slow, but heavy slow. Like the big loud stuff.
But everybody listening, make sure to like, subscribe, let us know what you think. Always give us that feedback. You can find us on, what's the list again? It's Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, YouTube,
Spotify. I
always forget Pandora, iHeartRadio.
The platforms,
yeah.
But
definitely.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me on the show. It's been sick. Thanks for listening.
Dude, thank you so much. You guys have a good one. Thanks for hanging, guys.
Thank you, y'all.